Okay, thank you, everybody. I'm going to open the meeting of the New York State Cemeteries Board. The first thing I want to say is this is a new adventure for us, doing this in the modern era of all remote. I'm reminding people that this meeting is being recorded. So especially when you speak, make sure you identify yourself. And I mean that every time, because we're going to provide a transcript of the meeting. First, second, let me just make sure my board members, I'll say something else again. If you're not speaking, please mute your microphone so we don't get feedback. That helps. Again, I'm Mark Patterson. I represent Secretary Rosado as the chairman of the board, and I see if Tom Fuller is here.
This is Tom Fuller, representing Dr. Howard Zucker for the Department of Health.
Thank you. And is Jill Faber here?
Yes, this is Jill Faber, and I'm representing Attorney General Letitia James.
Great. So we have a full board. We have other people here. I'm not going to ask you to introduce yourself this moment. When you speak, unmute and then identify yourself. Let me give you a little bit of the run of show. I just find with these meetings that it's helpful to know ahead of time what we're going to do. So this is the overview of the agenda. I'm going to in a moment ask Tony to make sure we're all clear about the chairman's ability to call a special meeting, just so that all of our members are grounded. Talk about the rules of notice and what we did to make sure we've complied. An explanation of the new rules allowing for remote meetings. And then I'll pause for any questions from members about those things. Then we'll move to the application. We have one application on the agenda. Louis can put that on. At some point when we're done presenting the application, I will make a motion for purposes of opening up the discussion. There will be a discussion, and then we'll take a vote. Before we adjourn, I'll also open up to the public. I saw Dave there. At least we did notice this, so we may have other people who would like to speak. What I'll hope to do is, if you are familiar with this function and you can put up your hand, I can call on you, or we'll just have to do it sort of the old-fashioned way of just having somebody try to identify themselves. I'll try to facilitate that and take it, keep things sort of in hand. So then we will adjourn. So that's the run of show. That's what the meeting will cover. Let me turn it over to Tony to talk about how this is the first time I've ever called a special meeting, what authorizes me to do that, any issues around what other members have, abilities to do if they want, and then also then talk about the notice, what we did to comply, and then the explanation of the new rules in the executive order that allows us to have these remote meetings. So, Tony?
All right. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, so we can start with Not-for-Profit Corporation Law, Section 1504.
Tony?
I'm sorry, can you hear me? I think I'm unmuted.
Yep.
I can hear you.
All right, great. So, Not-for-Profit Corporation Law, Section 1504, paragraph A7, says the following. After paragraph 6, which deals with the regular monthly meeting, it says, special meetings may be called by the chairman upon his initiative. It also provides for the other board members to call a meeting, but in this case, it was called by the chairman upon his initiative. And it's further states that written notice of the time and place of such special meeting shall be delivered to the office of each member of the board. So Mark called the meeting. The fellow members, Jill Faber and Tom Fuller, accepted unwritten, undelivered notice. I think they got notice by email or phone, and obviously they're here participating, so the requirement of delivery written notice has been waived by them. Of course, that's just the statutory requirement of calling a meeting. Then there's the public officers law for conducting an open meeting, complying with the open meeting law. And those requirements have been modified by the governor. The governor issued Executive Order 202.1. And part of that executive order specifically deals with Article 7 of the Public Officers Law, which deals with open meetings. And that executive order modified Article 7 to the extent necessary to permit any public body to meet and take such actions authorized by the law without permitting in public, in-person access to meetings and authorizing such meetings to be held remotely by conference call or similar service, provided that the public has the ability to view or listen to such proceedings and that such meetings are recorded and later transcribed. So this is being done in compliance with that executive order, and it is being recorded, and we will be transcribing. And as Mark said, it's very important to identify yourself when you speak so that whoever does the transcription can identify in the transcript who is speaking. And it's also important that we not speak over each other because that makes a garbled transcript. In furtherance of that executive order, it's been interpreted as follows. It's been interpreted to suspend the requirement that members of the board be physically convened or convened by video conferencing to achieve a quorum and to conduct public business of the board. So in other words, they don't have to be physically in each other's presence or presence by video conference. They can participate by telephone, which is what we're doing here. And it's further been interpreted to suspend the requirement that notice of the meeting include the physical location. Obviously, we don't have one physical location. Well, the physical location of each board member who's participating by telephone or similar. So a notice was given in compliance with the requirements of the open meeting law for these quickly noticed meetings. The open meeting law, if a meeting is noticed a week or more in advance, then there's 72 hours notice required to the public. If it's noticed less than a week in advance, then reasonable notice has to be given. And we've been able to achieve, despite the quick setup of this meeting, we've been able to give the public 24 hours notice. I believe it was posted on our website, notice sent out to the media, and publicly posted of this meeting 24 hours before we started. So we've noticed it. We're in compliance with the manner of proceeding with the meeting. And I think that covers what Mark had asked me to talk about at this point. Mark, are you there?
Mark?
Let's see Mark in the list.
He's got his video here.
Yes.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yes.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me? Okay. It's bandwidth issues. I was having trouble. Can you hear me?
Yep. We can hear and see you, Mark.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So do any of the other members have questions about what Tony has just described?
No.
No.
Mark, I think we hear your dog, but not you.
That was my dog.
Oh, okay. I feel better now.
Yeah, Mark, we keep losing your audio and video. I don't know if you can hear us.
I'm going to text him. I sent him a text. Give him a minute. Hey, Mark, I can hear you dialing, I think. If that's you. That means you may be back.
Am I back?
You're back.
I tried to call in, but since I'm back, I'll leave it there. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so Louis, you're going to present the application, and the applicant is also on the line?
Yeah, actually, I was going to defer to Mike on this. If, Mike, you have the bandwidth to do it, it would be better since you wrote it. If not, I'll do it.
I can explain my report.
Okay, go ahead.
This is Mike Seelman, senior investigator with the Division of Cemeteries. We received an application from Mount Pleasant Cemetery in Suffolk County to install two N20 AA cremation retorts. They currently have 3 existing retorts. The total cost of the addition will be under $207,000 based on estimates received for the installation. We know that the machines are going to cost $193,470. The machines will be placed in an existing building that's adjacent to the building's attached to the building that the current 3 machines are in, but the area is adjacent to the machines. They won't be in the same room as the existing machines, but it will be in the same building, if that makes sense. The cremation rate for Mount Pleasant Cemetery is increased by about 5% a year for the last 5 years. In addition to that, they've received, they entered into a contract with SUNY Stony Brook to accept about 140 additional cremations a year from the body donation program. The only permitting that's required is the DEC air quality registration. There's no local permits because they're not modifying any buildings. And the Division of Cemeteries has recommended approval of this.
Is Joe on, or do you want me to add the financial piece?
Louis, why don't you simplify things and you do it, please?
Okay, sure. So this is all the back of the envelope math, and nobody really knows what's going to happen. But right now, we circulated this before. We now have a more complete version. Right now, area crematories are up between 27 and 114% over last year if you take the last 3 weeks as a baseline. Unfortunately, the next 2 weeks are going to be worse. At least they're projected to be worse in terms of fatalities. We don't know for sure. This is just what has been reported elsewhere. We're obviously not our business we're not the public health statisticians. But based on what we've seen to date so far, the retorts will pay for themselves based solely on short-term additional fatalities from COVID-19. The projections the next 2 months, again, it's a projection, but that's our estimate is this will make money and make money for the crematory quickly. In addition, there's obviously a lot of demand for cremation downstate, and our crematories are all booking cremations between a week and 2 weeks in advance at this point. So this would help alleviate some of that pressure.
So, Louis, the key ingredient to this reason for it being a special meeting is that they can proceed rapidly, order the two retorts, and they could be, and maybe this is when we bring in Steve from the cemetery, but they might be up and running as soon as Tuesday?
Yep. And also, I think over time, they will need at least, for regular capacity, they're going to need at least one additional retort in the not too distant future, assuming no increased rate of fatality. By the way, I just looked at it. It's, if you take the entire downstate region, meaning New York City, Long Island, and Westchester counties cremations, and you use the 3-week period from March 16th through April 5th, you compare and you annualize that would be 54% more than they were doing in 2019.
Right. Oops. So, do you hear me?
Yeah, one more thing I should add, Mike, there are no things that we normally note. Mount Pleasant Cemetery is in compliance with all of our requirements. They do have a conflict of interest policy in place, and there are no related parties in this particular transaction. I'll also note that Mount Pleasant has been very forthcoming in reaching out to pick up slack from other crematories that are heavily burdened right now.
Okay. Do you want to bring Steve on, Louis? Is there anything that...
Steve, do you want to add anything?
Can we get
No, well, right now, this is Steve Cherry from Mount Pleasant. I had 2 phone calls today that I kind of had them on hold. One funeral director has 50, another funeral director has 30, and there's one more city funeral director that has about 70. And I have them on hold until next week because right now I have in my coolers about 40. I can hold about 140. I'm barely keeping up with what I have, but if I got these other 2 units, I could definitely be able to take on the rest of that load in a matter of, short period of time to get those done. But I did hear from Eugene from the coroner's office in the city, and he told me that I was making a pretty big dent in it, that it's actually helping empty out the morgue in there now because the funeral directors have a place to go. Before I actually started reaching out to everyone, they had nowhere. They were just piling up all over the place. So right as of right now, I'm doing a good job at what I'm doing, but it's hard. I'm pushing my equipment to almost to the end.
Okay. All right.
I can't. Yeah, I also told them that I can't do anybody over 300 pounds or 400 pounds because the machines are to the point where they're so hot, I wouldn't be able to take that chance of burning the place down. and the caskets. So all the funeral directors are 100% in compliance. They're very thankful. They all said they really appreciate that letting them know about all this, and they're doing their best to bury those and then do the rest who want cremation to get cremated.
Okay. So this is Mark Patterson again. Thank you, Steve. If I need to make the motion or not, so let me just say up front, do other board members have questions? And let me start with Jill, just so that we're organized. Jill, do you have any questions about the application?
No, I don't. I think the application itself and, the explanation we just heard in support of the application seems very clear. Thank you.
Tom, do you have any questions that you'd like to?
Is my understanding this is being paid for out of the general fund, correct?
Correct. I neglected to say that.
Okay, that's I have no other questions.
And I think this is Mark again. I think the application shows they have a sufficient surplus in the general fund to absorb the purchases. And there's the purchase, and as Mike pointed out, there's also the installation charge. So, okay, Tony, is there anything that you think we should consider?
Yeah, I would like to ask Mr. Sherry just a few questions just to elucidate more information. Starting, Mr. Sherry, again, this is Tony Melillo, counsel to the board. Can you talk about staffing, what staffing you have now, and what this increased capacity would do or require?
Well, I have 5 crematory operators on staff that 4 of them are all licensed, and then 1 is a brand new trainee, which is basically he got thrown into it, and he's doing unbelievable right now. So I have 5 guys, and myself including. I'm working I go to work at 5:30. I come home at 4, and then I turn around and I go back at about 8 or 9 and check on my guys again, and then stay with them and finish the night. The machines will be up and running by Wednesday at the latest if everything goes properly. The increase would be a huge amount. It'd probably give me another 20 a day. So I would probably be pushing close to 50 a day, 40 to 50 a day if we push the equipment, as hard as we could and, without damaging them.
And the staff that you have now is sufficient with that increased operation, and especially talk about the fact that they're in separate rooms, how you guys go back and forth between the rooms, and just give us a picture of how this is going to operate once you're up to the full.
Also, what's really good about the whole thing is that I have two coolers in the room that the 3 retorts are in, and I have two huge coolers in the room that those 2 new units would go in. So both rooms are already stocked with people, and the 3 or 4 of us go in between the rooms, and the paperwork's all separated, hanging on every door. Every box is marked. Everything's laid out, which ones what to go in what unit on the weights. So each box is labeled what unit number. So we have 1, 2, 3, and then you'll have 4 or 5, whatever it is. And those numbers will be put on the box according to their weights and the times they came in. So everything as they come through the door are already marked, labeled, male, female, and their weights and where they're going. And the time of the days of who's going in next to each unit. So it's very organized on how we have them going in. I think that's why we're so streamlined on getting it so much accomplished in such a short period of time.
Another question I had was, Louis and I are on daily calls trying to coordinate the response to the COVID-19 crisis. And we've heard from some crematories that they're having problems with some cremations because of the body bags, that some of them are very heavyweight and they're creating issues. Have you had any of those issues?
I haven't had those issues because those bags they're talking about, they're called crash bags, and they're black. And we mark that on the outside of the box, and that one's going to be done the first thing in the morning before the machine's too hot. So instead of putting that in a red-hot machine where it's going to burn really rapidly, really fast, and it gets really hot and then it'll smoke, we learned after the first one not to put it in a hot machine.
Okay, and how are you
So
finding out? I'm sorry, go ahead.
So the way we know if it's a crash bag or not, when you reach your hand in the side of the box, there's a little, like an oblong hole that you stick your fingers in to pull on the box in order to pull it out of the car or put it in your cooler or back and forth. You can look through that little hole and you can see what color the bag is. If they're black, we know they're crash bags.
Good to know.
If they're the light ones, then we know that those neoprenes, those very light ones that just kind of disappear really quick.
I do have, I mean, it's kind of a side issue, the City Stony Brook thing. How long have you been doing that, and what's the procedure like? That's a new thing to me.
Okay, so when they called me, Linda Benson called me, and she asked me if I could do the school and would I, be able to take it on. And then I had set up a meeting with her and her board, and we sat down together and we discussed how each cremation was going to go. And I did speak to Mike Sealer about it very in depth about how it should be done. And I wanted them to do the cremations as if we do them all in New York State. In other words, with the cremation authorization forms, the whole bit with the permits. So Linda basically took over the person. She has the authority. She's the next of kin to sign for those cremations because when they take those people in, they're actually giving them to the school. So the school is now the caregiver to that person. So Linda Benson fills out all the paperwork. They get the permits from the town, the local towns that the people come from. They bring TLC, which is a trade company, picks them up. They come in pouches, they box them up, and they bring them to me. They bring them to me in two vans, like 4 or 5 in each van, and then they go back and they bring 4 or 5 and go back. They go back and forth all day till they get them all over to me. And then at that point, we go through all that paperwork. We check all the permits. We make sure everything's marked out good, and then we cremate them. After we cremate them, we put them in a cabinet, and Linda sends out a letter to all the families. And the families, either they come and pick them up or we'll mail them. If someone's in the family that's the next of kin and they decease, then at the end of when the 120 days are up, I take those ashes and I deliver them back to Linda, and she signs the book that she's received them all. And then at that point, Linda holds them for quite a while. Now, if she doesn't get rid of those ashes back to the family, then she gives them back to TLC. TLC signs a document saying that they received the ashes from Linda, and then TLC gives another certificate that they put them in the ocean. So they'll mark the date and time that they put them in the ocean, and they give that back to Linda as a certificate of where they went because the family never retrieved them. So if the next of kin later on at a later date was to come back and say, I want the ashes, we could say, well, we held them on for another year, no one came, and, this is what we've done.
I don't know. Did you identify who TLC is? What is that?
It's a weird name. It's it's a trade company. They're in Suffolk County. It's a long name. I can look it up later online and email that to Louis, I guess. I can tell you who that trade company is. If you type in TLC Trade Service, it pops right up.
Okay.
It's a bunch of people's last names, I think.
I don't want to go too far in the weeds. You've given me some great information. My guess is I'll be speaking to Louis and Mike, because I have more questions, but I need to go through that here in this process. It sounds like you're doing a really yeoman's effort to make sure you're in compliance with the law in this unusual process.
Thank you, Tony. Any other legal issues to be raised?
Yeah. No, I mean, the only point I think that should be stressed in this is, even though, as Louis has pointed out, demand has been going up on its own without COVID-19, and it's expected to go up. This application and dispute with which we're dealing with, it is because of COVID-19. I mean, we've got a board meeting next week, but rather than wait for that, we thought this today to speed it up because of that. And I think clearly this is an important piece of dealing with the crisis that's going on right now. So, I just wanted to stress that point because it seemed to get lost a little bit. That this really is a response to what's going down in the city and what could be coming up here.
Okay, thank you, Tony. I'm going to make a motion to approve this application for the cemetery to purchase 2 more retorts. If I get a second, then we can have another round of discussion amongst the board members. Is there a second?
This is Tom Fuller. I second.
Second.
Great. We have a motion on the table. I'll go the other way to see if the board members have any other questions to be asked in this regard. Tom, do you have any additional questions you'd like to explore?
No, I have no other questions.
Jill, do you have any other questions?
No, I have no questions either.
Thank you. I will call the vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 So that's all 3 board members voted yes. The motion or the application is approved. Just next, I think, is to move to public session. Are there any members of the public that are wishing to speak? And I'll start with David from NISTAC, because I saw him. I don't know if there's anybody else wishing to speak. David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. David Fleming from the New York State Association of Cemeteries. I would just like to thank everyone who's involved, particularly in Albany and Lewis, for all the work that's been going in 7 days a week to deal with this crisis. It's been a tremendous amount of time on everyone's part. I thank you for the efforts. It's no surprise to anyone that our crematories and cemeteries downstate are just absolutely overwhelmed, many running at 3 times their usual capacity to address this crisis and working very hard. And, I appreciate that that's been acknowledged, but I also want to acknowledge the efforts in Albany. Which brings me to another issue, and that is for the board's consideration with the meeting coming up next week, to give you a little time to think about it. But I've been contacted by a number of cemeteries who have PM loans, who have loans that are going to be due shortly. And while there have been increased rates of cremation, it's important for everyone to understand that those rates of cremation have price points that are set by the state and regulated. So their costs are through the roof. They have, they're operating in many cases 16 to 18 hours a day. So they're paying time and a half, if not more, for their employees, and in many cases not making anything or near anything on the cremations. At the same time, the governor's executive orders have essentially dried up all of the pre-need sales that would come into these cemeteries, and resulting in some furloughs of employees and really a drying up of traditional income for cemeteries. And I'd like the board to consider, we've done this in ice storms and other issues, the potential of perhaps, and I understand there's legal issues involved, but entertaining at least a 1-year extension on some of those PM loans for cemeteries who can show a need to do so. We've received word from around the state where the pre-need income has just dried up. And really, on my calls just until this meeting, I've been hearing all day about folks who are really concerned that their income is completely dried up, and the cost associated with trying to keep pace with this pandemic has been incredibly brutal on these nonprofits. And I would also point out that the federal programs like PPP that address nonprofit losses of income and for payroll, none of those apply to 501c13s. They only apply to 501c3s and 19s. So that is a real problem. They were in a very difficult situation. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, David. I don't have a way of knowing if there's anyone else on the call that would like to speak, so I'll just have to throw it open to see if anybody else, and I'll try to mud wrestle if there's more than one ask at a time. So is there anybody else wishing to speak to the board? I'll just remind people we have a regular board meeting, Tuesday, is that right, on the 14th? There are only a few issues on, I think 2 issues on the agenda there, but we'll also be able to give a report on what we've been doing. And again, if the public, or David, if the cemeteries, things that they would like to say to us, I'll try to manage that. Again, it's sort of an experiment to see if we can manage the public comment in this forum, but I would do my best to facilitate any public comment that your members would like, so they can channel it through you. That's okay. So, there being no other issues before the board, I'll make a motion to adjourn this special meeting. Can I get a second?
So I'll second that.
Okay, Tom, all in favor? Aye?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, all 3 board members indicated yes. The meeting is adjourned, but thank you for everybody for putting up with the special meeting and the technology. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, everyone.
Bye-bye.